call here, so.
If you like to talk about combat sports and you want to join the discussion, click the subscribe button below and the bell notification icon next to it and join Knucklehead Nation.
Still looking good?
Ladies and gentlemen of Knucklehead Nation, welcome to the FightersRep video podcast. I'm your host of FightersRep, and today we have a special guest, the creator of the Love Over Narcissism channel, which has been absolutely exploding on YouTube as of late, and also a fight promoter, a guy I met promoting IKF events down in South Florida when I was living down there. Ladies and gentlemen, Jay Dezmen. Jay, man, how are you today, brother?
How you doing, brother? All is good, man. Just, living it up here, getting ready to work, but I'm doing all right, man.
Hey, I appreciate you being on the channel. Obviously, I wanted to link up with you again because not only are you an IKF promoter, but you've also created one of the most poppin' YouTube channels on narcissism, which is, a mental illness, something a lot of people don't know about and should know about. Kind of tell me a little bit about your channel, Jay.
All right, well, little backstory is, as you know, we spoke about this before. I was in a relationship with a narcissistic woman, and I learned a lot about her behaviors and everything, and how abusive she was, and it was like I was kind of duped, right, by this person. And just before we ended up splitting, we had gotten engaged, which is the funny part about it. We had gotten engaged, and just a little under a month after we got engaged, she kicks me out the house for no reason, and started smearing my name to people, started talking negatively about me, even though I was really good to her. And so, little by little, people started coming to me and started telling me things like, "Hey, this woman that you're dealing with," and a lot of people in the just to let you guys know, I'm also part of the local salsa scene in Brooklyn, and she's a salsa instructor.
Ay, papi.
Ya tú sabes, bro. So a lot of people who had known this person was kind of watching our relationship unfold. Apparently, we were under a microscope, and a lot of people came to me and started hitting me up and telling me things like, "This woman is bad news. She's, she's a narcissistic person who does this to every man she's been with. She plays games. She cheats. She smears their name. She creates this false identity to make herself look like a victim." So I started learning about narcissistic personality disorder and narcissism, and initially I was very angry, and I wanted to do everything under the sun to this woman to expose her. But instead, I just focused on doing this channel so that I can tell my story and then start diving deep into the subject of narcissism, but also try to help people who listen break free and get over an abusive relationship. And most abusive relationships stems from one partner being narcissistic. And narcissism is on a spectrum, so it can go from as little as just taking selfies and loving yourself to all the way to psychopathy and being like a straight serial killer. It's on a spectrum, so you can either be low on the spectrum and be a good person who has love for yourself but still has empathy, or you can be high on the spectrum with absolutely no empathy and don't care about anybody else but yourself and will do anything to hurt anyone just to make yourself glorified. You know what I mean?
And those are the really harmful ones that kind of like the one you dealt with in your life. Kind of like the ones I think everybody's dealt with without having this knowledge.
Right, yeah, that's the thing. A lot of people don't realize most abusive relationships stems from one partner that, we can't really diagnose people, but what we can say is that, there's one side that is toxic. And my channel deals with it talks about dealing with toxic people. A toxic relationship is one-sided, where one party does nothing for anybody else. They have no empathy, and all they do is extract from one partner, take. Then they abuse, but then they go around and flip it and play victim. They gaslight, which is a form of psychological manipulation, which is to try to make a person's reality seem invalid. You know what I mean? Then they will discard you and then move on to the next victim, and without even a thought. You could have children and with this person, and that person will cut you off, cut off the kids, and move on to the next victim. And it's really bad. You know.
An
It's
absolutely fascinating channel you've created, and a great way that you've created to sort of heal yourself, Jay, by creating this channel, helping so many other people, and kind of bringing yourself back up and bringing all these people back up with you. Something I admire very much from you. But you know, these narcissists, Jay, they're not just people in romantic relationships, right? Part of the reason I got you on this interview today is because these can be, you know, your friends, your family, people that you deal with in professional relationships, especially in the fight industry that we're in. You know, where, you know, you kind of introduced me to the IKF and helped me down this path, and I appreciate that very much. I mean, is that something you dealt with in the fight game at all?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The first partner that I've ever had, and I'm not going to mention names for the sake of not wanting to be sued, but the first partner that I had was actually, in my opinion and in my experience, a sociopath. This person I dealt with in New York. I was When I first started promoting fights in New York, I was promoting underground fights because I was very new to the game. This was about 20 years ago, and I started promoting underground NHB fights. And the person that I was dealing with had really no idea how to promote. Just grabbed people from different camps and kind of created like a fight club in New York. And I dealt with this person in the beginning. It was like there was some respect there, but then after a while, this person just started becoming more demanding and more, less courteous, and didn't really care about what I wanted or anything like that. And then at some point, even started to display violent tendencies, not really towards me, but towards other people. Like, he even one time his brother didn't forgot to give him some money for tickets, and he threw him in the ring against like a professional boxer.
Wow.
And yeah, this was like old school UFC rules. Like no biting, no eye gouging, no fish hooking. Everything else was legal, and we were doing this in the Bronx. And that was kind of like my first taste of dealing with somebody who is uh, narcissistic on the high level, the high spectrum. Um, and it was like he constantly expected me to take the brunt of the work and put together these events, but he did nothing and nothing for me, and I got nothing in return. So after a while, I just kind of disconnected myself and decided to deal with the USKBA, which was a sanctioning body that I was working with at the time, and start going more legit, and started working as a referee for amateur MMA out in the East Coast. Started doing kickboxing and local Muay Thai events. Started officiating a lot of events, and I've right now I've refereed well over 4,000 fights and everything, and I've gotten my experience through them, so I'm happy with that. But then I've also dealt with other promoters as an official. I've dealt with other promoters who are narcissistic. I've dealt with sanctioning bodies who have officials that are narcissistic. And what it is that these people are not really looking to help the sport. What they're looking is to gain power and adoration from the people who are looking to help the sport. And what they do is they piggyback off of good people, where like a sanctioning body will, the narcissistic person that I dealt with in a sanctioning body in New York would come to my events and oversee things, but he would just constantly make constantly criticize everything I was doing. And this was a person that I introduced him to the sanctioning body. He had no idea about sanctioning bodies. He had no experience in the fight game. But as soon as he got involved with this sanctioning body, it's like he became the boss, and he wanted to tell everybody what to do in New York. And so what happened with that is that eventually we were business partners at one point, and then we broke free, and I started promoting. He was doing the sanctioning body stuff, and then he basically like trashed my name to people, and started talking bad about me, and then started burning bridges. And that sanctioning body, because of him, lost so many promoters, and another sanctioning body came along and picked all those promoters up. And the last straw was when I heard my partner telling me that he was basically trashing my name to her and telling her that, I'm a good guy, but I don't know enough about the game, and I make mistakes and I'm stupid and everything. And when I heard that, I was just like, yeah, I'm cutting you off. And I broke free from that. And from that point on, he hasn't really done much better. That other sanctioning body kind of took over. So.
Yeah. And Jay, you kind of started your own sanctioning body, or you revived an old one?
Well, I did in New York. The USKBA was a sanctioning body that John Jones won his first world championship. Um, and so the president of the USKBA, which is Paul Rosner, had passed away, and the sanctioning body was left with a gentleman by the name of Donnie Caroli. And Donnie Caroli is the gentleman that got me involved in the fight game on a more professional level, on a more legit level. When I was doing those underground fights, he had came to one of them and said, "Listen, brother, you got to stop doing these. You got to go more legit, man. We're trying to grow the sport." And so he took over the USKBA, and he kind of moved on with his life. And so what happened was I ended up purchasing the USKBA off of him. And initially, for the first 2 years that I purchased it, we were sanctioning events in New York, and then New York finally signed kind of MMA signed the bill and put MMA into law in New York and everything. And then I just decided, you know what, the sanctioning thing was a little bit too much work and everything, and I just decided to start promoting again, because that's something that I really enjoy doing, and that's something that I've been doing for about 20 years, and so I got back on that horse.
So Jay, I mean, do you have fights coming up?
Well, I took a bit of a break a year ago to focus on my personal life. A gentleman who's so involved in his work and has no social life. Sometimes you got to put down the pen and paper and get up and say, you know what, I want to go out and start living a little bit. So I did that, and I wanted to focus on putting together some events this year, but then this global pandemic kind of struck, and it just really kind of soured the plans for now. But once this thing kind of passes, I'm going to jump back on the horse.
Sounds awesome. And besides kickboxing, which is how I met you. I mean, is there another sport you're interested in sanctioning, or are you just trying to build kickboxing? Because I know you're like me. You seem to favor the striking genre more than anything.
Originally, I was a Kyokushin guy, and I came up doing Kyokushin and boxing, and that's something that I love. So when UFC first came around, was the same year that K1 first came around, and everybody jumped on the UFC craze, because at that time the UFC was the scariest thing you could watch. It was like, oh my God, somebody's gonna die in this no holds barred arena, and of course, nearly 30 years later, we understand that that was never the case. It's probably the safest of all combat sports, even in the no holds barred phase. But when I started watching early K1, I was watching guys like Ernesto Hoost and Peter Arts and those guys, and I was just like, wow, it was similar to Muay Thai, but some key differences was like, the no clinching, no like neck clinching and stuff like that. And so it's basically Kyokushin with punches to the head, because in Kyokushin it's like bare knuckle, but you can only punch the body. You can knee the body and knee the legs, and you can kick the legs, the body, and the head. But in K1, you can do all of that stuff, and I just fell in love with it. I just thought, oh my God, what a spectacular sport! It's fantastic, and the knockouts were so brutal, and the striking was fast paced, and it was like you really had to have a major set of grapefruits in order to step in a K1 ring. I personally think you had to have more courage to step in a K1 ring than in a UFC ring back in the days. You know what I mean? Because back in the days, the UFC, the fighters weren't really that good. In the beginning, where you had a lot of single style matches and everything, and the fighters who were fighting in K1 under that sport were already, super high level. UFC hadn't developed really high level guys; it was in its infancy. Whereas kickboxing has been around for a long time, it just resurfaced.
Right. Jay, I kind of wanted to circle back a little bit to the narcissism thing. Why do you think narcissists, go to the fight game? An industry where typically, you're supposed to have a lot of confidence. Your ego isn't supposed to be shattered. Why do you think we find narcissists in the fight game?
Well, think about it. We're talking about fighting here. We're talking about something that normally features men with egos and bravado, and who's the biggest, baddest, and toughest person around. Um, Fighting will always have that element of like in the ring when you're fighting, your ego should be down, but the truth is that egos are always high, especially when you're dealing with men who are trying to one up each other, men and women who are trying to one up each other in a physical sport that involves knocking somebody out cold or hurting someone. Um, there's a little bit of and of course narcissists in general are actually pretty cowardly people on the inside, but that the false identity that they create for themselves is actually a brash, confident, arrogant person that believes they can do anything. And narcissists are entitled people. They feel like they deserve whatever accolades for no reason. So you have the gentleman like I've dealt with in New York, who knew nothing about the fight game, and I introduced him to the sanctioning body in New York, and then he got involved, became one of the Northeast directors, and just decided that he wanted to one start nitpicking at other events that weren't even sanctioned by them, um, start scrutinizing other promoters, and start smearing other promoters for not using his sanctioning body, create rules as he goes along to try to shut down events, and create last minute rules to try to create conflict with promoters. All because he wants to be known as the boss who runs New York. And it's like, no, you don't run New York. You're not the athletic commission yourself. Stop lying to yourself. And so narcissists, they have this, they're delusional people. They have this grandiose way of thinking where they feel like they should be at the top of the game, and everything. For instance, I truly believe Dana White is narcissistic, you know?
Do
And
you do you think that played into or is playing into his attempt to kind of put this event together right now while this pandemic is going on?
maybe I can't really say for sure, but all I know is that any other large promotions in the past that have come about that have threatened the UFC's success has been bought off and everything, and this as a promoter, I respect him. I mean, he's got the UFC to where it is, but you can see it in his personality. He doesn't like to hear any kind of criticism. He is, promoters will ask certain questions. He shuts them down. He thinks he's right about everything. He's not a fighter. You know what I mean. So, but he wants to disrespect fighters and all that stuff. Um, Putting this event together, I don't know. Maybe he's trying to keep the ball rolling to keep business going or something like that. I'm not too sure, but yeah, I can definitely tell you personality wise, he definitely has high levels of narcissism and low levels of empathy. So, you know,
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen of Knucklehead Nation, this is Fighters Rep Promotions, and we're here with J.C. Dezmen. If you don't know, thank you for watching the show. You can follow JC at his amazing YouTube channel where he discusses narcissism. Very, very valuable information if anybody's ever been in any kind of toxic relationship. That channel is Love Over Narcissism on YouTube, so definitely check it out and subscribe. Also, feel free to subscribe to our channel, hit the bell notification icon next to it, and join Knucklehead Nation, where we have, fantastic personalities in the fight game, interviewed all the time, guys like JC, who, is not only a promoter, but again, doing successful things outside the fight game. JC, have you ever come across narcissistic fighters that you had to promote? This is something I wanted to ask you because I definitely have, and I wanted to maybe hear one of your experiences on that.
I have come across fighters that have done absolutely nothing to promote themselves. And we all know how this fight game works. Listen, I know there are guys who have a lot of talent out there and who want to be promoted, but at the same time, the truth of the matter is promoters push guys who promote themselves. That's how you get pushed up. And pro promoters will not push guys who don't sell tickets and everything, um, or anything like that. So I've had fighters who came in thinking that they were hot shit. You know what I mean? Pardon my language, and thinking that they were hot stuff, and did okay, and then say, "Oh, you need to promote me. You need to put me in a title shot and everything," but did absolutely nothing to help the promotion along and everything. And I've given them chances, and they just continue to either tell people that the promotion is not pushing them, or they're getting set up and everything. And it's like, hey, listen, we're all working together for one goal, is to bring up the sport. You're working towards becoming a fighter and becoming a name, and to eventually, hopefully, become a champion and have this as your source of income and livelihood. You know, and there's things that you have to do in order to help that move along. You have to have a fan base. You have to, in this age of social media, you have to be online and talking to your fans and everything. And if you're not going to do that, you feel overly entitled to think that promoters are just going to give you a shot because you're a decent fighter. Well, I mean, it doesn't work like that. At the end of the day, it's still a business. And while I try my best to take care of people, I've dealt with fighters who thought I was just supposed to give them title shots after one win. Who want certain fights and don't want to take other fights because they feel like, oh well, I've had my wins. I don't want to fight this guy. I want to fight that guy. It's like, come on, dude. This, for the most part, I deal with amateur fighters. So you're really just trying to get experience so that you can go to the pros, man. You don't have the experience yet, nor the popularity to just go calling out, um, like telling me or other promoters what you can do. You know what I mean? If you're helping the promotion along and everything, and you're popular, guess what? You're putting in the work. You're putting in the hard work, and you will be recognized for that. But I've dealt with a lot of fighters who just thought they were hot shit, and a lot of them that thought they were hot stuff, narcissistic tendencies, thought they were hot stuff, went in and got beat up, and never came back because they got their bubble burst. And that's a common thing of narcissistic people. When they get exposed for what they truly are, they disappear. In my opinion, like, say for instance, Ronda Rousey, I don't really believe Ronda Rousey is a narcissist, but she definitely has narcissistic traits. Where she feels entitled and she feels she's better than everybody. She's disrespectful and she's overly emotional on the negative side. Know, where she cries, catches tantrums, and then when she went in there and got her head nearly knocked off, she disappeared for a year, and then came back and got her head nearly knocked off again, and is no longer fighting. So I mean, there are plenty of narcissistic fighters in the game because ultimately this is a game of who can hurt who the most, and when you're putting your body on the line to potentially be put in the hospital if you don't do well, you got a lot of guys who take that to heart and think, well, I'm the best. I'm uh, nobody's going to run through me and everything. And sometimes they can have like this delusional way of thinking that the moment they taste a loss, it just all goes downhill from them because it's like their false reality has come crashing down. The ones that I've dealt with that are humble, train really hard, have been good, do good PR, have fans and everything. Those are the ones that succeed. Even the fighters who maybe have records that aren't great, but that these are guys that they put it on the line, they fight hard, they're tough, they give it their all. Those guys get recognized as well because that's a promoter's dream. The narcissistic ones are the ones that get shit coming back on them, and eventually karma hits them the moment they suffer that one loss and just disappear from the game, or they run into promoters that don't want to deal with them because they're just too much to handle and think that they own the world. When the fact is, they haven't done anything, but they haven't even scratched the surface yet. So.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I use the word unfortunate very diplomatically. It's unfortunate that I've dealt with a lot of narcissists in this game. I actually had one kid, Jay. I wanted to get your thoughts on this one. I had a kid who fought for me a couple times, and the last time he was supposed to fight for me, after I had found him a fight, matched him, and everything, he waited. I think it was until the last few days before the event, or the last week, or something like that, to tell me, right, after I checked up on him to see if his medicals were done. He responds, instead of telling me, because again, only like a week out from the fight or something like that. He responds to my message to check up to see if he did his medicals. Says, my coaches don't think I should take this fight because they believe you're setting me up. Mind you, he's got more experience and more wins than his opponent did. But he says, my coaches don't want me to take the fight because they think you're setting me up. But we're wondering if I can get on your next card. I mean, have you ever heard anything? Have you ever heard anything that made you question your reality more? Was he gaslighting me?
Who knows? Maybe he was. A lot of times in this, especially in the amateurs, where they don't have contracts that binds people to follow through on it. Um, a lot of times you have a lot of guys making excuses, and I had a guy tell me that he couldn't get to the venue one day, you know, and he actually, as a matter of fact, you were working with me that day in Doral, and this guy said that he couldn't get to the venue. He got stuck in traffic, and I was like, dude, if I see you, I'm gonna headbutt you, because you don't do that. You make up a lie that, like, seriously, man, I could have had somebody pick him up. Guys, you have a lot of wannabe tough guys in the game who want to get that glory, but then, depending on who they're fighting when it comes down to it, they don't really want to get in there. They just kind of want to show out for social media and whatever. Um, if this kid had trained like he said he did, and he knows his opponent, why is he saying, "Oh, my coaches are thinking you're setting me up"? Especially if he has more experience. First of all, you're in this game to fight. You're in this game to take on a challenge. You want to see who's the best. Don't you want to fight the best in your division? Don't you want to fight somebody who can give you a challenge? Now, I understand for the people who aren't fighters, fighting is a scary thing. Fighting is not. You have to have a certain kind of, you have to have balls, and you have to be a little bit crazy to want to get in a ring and go with somebody who could potentially put you in a hospital. But if this is what you chose to do, then why are you making excuses not to do it? That's how I look at it. You know what I mean? I understand. I've had people say things like "I'm not ready" and all, and I got to be honest with you. I respect the people who actually tell me I'm not ready for this fight, man, or whatever the case may be. I mean, I'm never happy when a person ducks out of a fight. I'm never happy about that. But I respect the person more who's honest and says something like, "Listen, man, I honestly have not trained, or I don't think I'm ready for this fight. I'm just not in good shape, or I'm having doubts." I'll actually respect that person a lot more than somebody who says, "Oh, who tries to either shift blame and throw it on somebody else. Well, my coaches are saying that this and that, or, you're trying to set me up because, whatever the case may be." That to me says that he wasn't confident enough to take on this challenge and fight somebody because he might lose. You
Right,
know?
right. I mean, it's crazy, man. I've had people fake accidents, and I've confronted them afterwards, and they've apologized. That I agree with you. I mean, if you tell me you're not ready, I respect you 1,000 times more than if you come up with some bullshit excuse. And it's almost always where you can sniff out the bullshit excuse when you're, a promoter like me or you. I appreciate you bringing up the social media thing, because I think that's really enabling a lot of these guys nowadays. I actually had someone, I mean, it's happened more than once, where, they just want to put on Instagram that they've got a fight coming up and share their poster and do things like that. But, they're not actually interested in competing, which is not social media is not a good thing for a narcissist. Am I right, Jay?
Well, social media is a narcissist playground. Narcissists social media to kind of feed, to put on this false world so that people can look at them and think, oh, this person is living the greatest life, and this person is doing big things. When the fact of the matter is that's not really the case. So social media is something that very much um, enables people in general. Like narcissistic people will use social media to post pictures of them on vacation and pictures of them doing big things. When in actuality, maybe they were on vacation once, like 10 years ago, but yet they'll post a picture every year of the same vacation spot saying, oh, every year I go to this place and do this and that. Or a person, say, for instance, breaks out of a relationship and now goes post pictures of him and a lot of women just to show off and say, oh, I'm doing good. I don't need nobody. A fighter who has narcissistic tendencies will post the poster with him on it. Oh, catch me in this and that, catch me that. It will post up videos of him training. Will post up little promotion promos and say things like, "Yeah, I'm coming for you. You better watch out because you better have trained long and hard." And then all of a sudden, last minute, won't sell any tickets, won't show up to the weigh-ins. Will say like, "Yo, I got my car stolen," or "Yo, I think this promoter is a piece of shit and he set me up." And I've dealt with this so many times. And it's like I had a fighter one time tell me the week of the event that he didn't know he was supposed to get medicals and blood work. And I'm like, that is the first thing I tell every fighter knows. It mandates that you have to have medical and blood work. So this fighter was told this right away from the sanctioning body. He lied. So when he came to the event, and when he came to the event, I said, I told him, I said, "You really screwed us, man." He goes, "I didn't know." I said, "You absolutely did know. You didn't want to do it. You didn't want to do it." And then I kicked him out because I didn't even want to see him there. He wasn't invited. And then a couple of months later, he fought at a show in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And he got knocked out, and so it was karma for him. I guess he understood he wasn't that good and wasn't ready, and that's why later on he ended up getting beat up bad. You know what I mean?
That always happens too, man. It's always these idiots that end up either with crazy lopsided losing records, or they get knocked out and get, erased and completely forgotten from the sport. That's part of the reason I really don't sweat them a lot of the time. I'll tell you, Jay, it's pretty incredible. The handful of guys that I've dealt with that have given me issues like that are just outrageous, have all gone on to do absolutely nothing with their lives. And it's really amazing. I mean, you can fool maybe one or two people, but you definitely can't fool the world. Jay, how common, because a lot of people might be watching this and think to themselves, well, narcissism is not a common thing, but I mean, what percentage of the population would you say is narcissistic?
In actuality, it's about 30% of the population. In this age of social media, narcissism is something that is like looked on as a good trait for some reason. Where everybody posts pictures of them taking selfies and doing something, or people will always post a meme that glorifies them cutting people off, or it glorifies them, cutting people off or doing them dirty, when in actuality, they just want to sound like they are in control of their life. They just want to sound like they don't care about anybody else. And you have this age where you want to be looked at as the badass, super cool. And it seems like empathy is something that's frowned upon lately. So pretty soon it's like in the next 50 years, I tell you, if God is willing, we make it that far. But in the next 50 years, I mean, it's going to be like 50% of the population is going to be narcissistic, you know? And the thing about narcissism is that narcissists in general are the unhappiest people in the world. They're not happy people. They're not good people. These are people who take, constantly extract fuel from others. They live their whole life. Their whole life's purpose is validation, trying to seek out validation and use people to either gain residual benefits, validation, adoration, adulation, and attention. That's all they want. These are not hardworking people. They believe in shortcuts. They don't believe in hard work. And eventually, when that fuel starts to run out, where people giving them whatever they want and people rewarding them for their childish behaviors, once that starts to die out, they disappear. So, I mean, narcissism is, for the people out there who think it's cool to, constantly tell people, oh, shout out to my haters. It's like, who cares? Most of the people who say stupid stuff like that, shout out to my haters, I see you watching, probably don't have haters watching. You know
Right,
what I mean?
I can't stand those fucking people.
Yeah. They're just trying to sound cool, and it's like it just really sounds stupid and childish. And you can tell these people, you can tell who these people are when they're like, "Oh, shout out to my haters, bitch! I see you watching." It's like nobody, and then you see the person just one nobody watching or anything like that. They're just, they're trying to put on this front because deep down, their real world sucks. The fake reality that they're putting on social media is what's fueling them and making them look cooler. But their real world is trash. Their real world is filled with, laziness, being uninspired, doing nothing with their lives, and just manipulating other people just to gain some validation or to gain some kind of attention from the masses.
Jay, are you at all ever dealing with a fighter or any other person a second time once you see any sort of narcissistic red flag, or you just, with the experience you've gathered, are you just cutting them off?
No, I cut people off, man. I cut bad people off. Good people, you got to understand, narcissists have no empathy. That's a common trait of narcissism, is low empathy, meaning that they will do whatever it takes to hurt you just so that they can get theirs first. I deal with good people. And anybody who's good, even if I have disagreements with good people, they're still good people, And even if I go my separate ways with somebody else who's a good person, who's mentally healthy and emotionally healthy, I can still respect that person. But a person who displays narcissistic tendencies, narcissistic traits, hurts other people for the sole purpose of validating themselves, or to try to get a one-up, or to try to step on other people to get by in life without doing hard work, no, I won't deal with them at all. And since breaking free from that relationship that I was in, that narcissistic relationship that I was in, I have cut quite a few people off that I have seen that have become toxic, that use people, that are bad to people, and that are pathological liars. I'm going to turn 42 in 2 weeks, and let me tell you something. At this age, I'm trying to live my life in peace. The fight game is hectic enough as a promoter. It's hectic enough to put together events, to pay all that money for insurance, the sanctioning body, the official, the ring, the ambulance, the venue, putting out advertisements and doing stuff for social media, putting out press conferences, putting your reputation on the line to put on an event that if the event goes sour, your reputation is done, It's bad enough doing that. I don't want to deal with toxic people who are going to make that worse just because they're mad that the spotlight is not on them. I can't deal with that. Like if you work with me, I work with you. If you can show me respect, I show you respect. If we disagree, we disagree. But have respect and display some empathy for people. You're not the top shit in the world. You know what I mean? Like, hey, there's other people out there that want their just due as well, man. We can all work in this together. Whether it be in the fight game or in life. But if you're trying to double cross me or con me so you can get something out of me, no, I will cut that off. And let me tell you, it's not easy, because sometimes you wind up valuing these people, and you got to cut off people that you really essentially love. Sometimes I've cut off family members that were narcissistic, and to this day it still breaks my heart. But I can't be around people who just don't respect my boundaries.
Absolutely, and I have the same sort of mindset. If anybody shows me any sort of narcissistic conduct, 10 times out of 10, hell, 11 times out of 10, I will never deal with them again. And I'm very happy with the small circle that I keep. Jay, man, thank you so much for your time. Where can people find out more about you and about your amazing channel, Love Over Narcissism, and maybe get in touch with you in order to maybe compete on one of your cards up in New York or in the Northeast somewhere?
The channel is youtube.com/love over narcissism. You could just type in the search on YouTube for Love Over Narcissism. If you want to catch me on my Facebook, I just created this Facebook page like several months ago. So it's JC Dezmen. That's JC, and Dezmen is DEZMEN. You guys can catch me on there. I post a lot of dark humor. I don't really talk so much about the fight game on there. It's just me kind of having a good time, posting a lot of dark humor and memes that make people laugh. I do deal with a lot of people who have been abused and in abusive relationships, and the reason why I post a lot of dark humor and stuff is to get them to kind of laugh at life and laugh at the dark stuff. And a lot of the people who have spoken, I've spoken to thousands of people all across the world about this disorder and everything. And my purpose now, for the meantime, is to help people realize that they are stronger than these what I call low-level subhumans who like to extract from people, never give back, only look to hurt people, and only look to take and just continue their life in their little unhappy quest to try to gain supremacy and do absolutely nothing with their lives. You know what I mean? I help the victims get over that. I help the victims get over the trauma bond of being abused and help them to see their strength again. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, Jay. Hey, man, I want to thank you again for your time. You're a great friend, a great person. I appreciate what you're doing on that channel, man. I'm really glad you decided to go through with it, and it's an absolute success. And I wish you continued success. I know you'll find nothing but continued success. Knuckleheads, that's all we've got for tonight. If you guys are interested, tune in to Chad George and his Savage Hour podcast. We'll be going live there at 8:30. And obviously give JC Dezmen a follow at Love Over Narcissism on YouTube. Jay, have a wonderful night, man. I appreciate your time, brother.
Thank you for having me out here, brother. I just want to say that it was because of you that this channel has blown up, man. That Love Over Narcissism, because of your help, this channel has blown up. And I'm grateful and I'm thankful. And you are my brother. And thank you for having me on the show, man. I really appreciate it, and it was a lot of fun.
For sure, my brother. Have a great night. We'll talk soon.
All right, brother.
All right, man.